the whole Cletus McFarland deal. It happened after our show last week, and Mark, you gave your opinion on it. But for people that didn't see that on Dirty Mo Media, I want to ask you again. But also, we had some comments over the weekend. Our reporter Noah Reed was talking with Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar likes it. He's buddies with Cletus McFarland. But then Kyle Busch was pretty matter of fact. Now, if you watch the whole about a minute and 40 clip, he says, look, this has always happened in NASCAR. If you can bring funding, so why stop now? But then he also kind of joked, look, how many races does he have? Does he have 10 races? My son Brexton has more than him, and he's only 10 years old. And that doesn't set well with a lot of us, Kyle Busch said. So to me, this isn't just about Cletus McFarland, who I think is a great guy and great for the sport, and he can bring eyeballs, and he's great with his humanitarian efforts. But also, it's about this NASCAR approval process, and we talk about it with Cletus, we talk about it with Natalie Decker, so that's kind of at the core of this.
Yeah, and don't forget Mike Wallace.
Mike Wallace, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't get approved, a past winner at Daytona. And, in the Busch Series at the time, super incredible super speedway racer, Daytona and Talladega racer. So he didn't get approved. I understand why he didn't get approved. But then I feel like he would have been much more capable than Cletus would be in a O'Reilly race. But like I said before, I don't have a problem with it. He still has the hurdle of Rockingham. I agree with Kyle Busch 100%. Love the guy. I'm glad that he said what he said. Brexton certainly would be much more ready for Talladega at 10 because the kid's been driving since he was 4 and wins in everything he sets down in. But that's not the point. The point is, and, there's a lot of argument. You shouldn't be social media influencer and get a ride. Well, doggone it. I agree with that. And yet I remember racing with a bunch of guys that had no business on a racetrack. Bad. It made me, these guys, it irritated the fool out of me. And I'm not talking about at the height of my career in the 90s. I'm talking about in the 80s when I was trying to get in and was 3-time ASA champion and all that. And we had guys come in that, you didn't have to, there weren't huge fields. So making the field at Daytona or Talladega was once again easy. And driving Daytona and Talladega, once again, is easy. You need no real experience. I said once that my mother could qualify the same speed as me, at Talladega. And she could, because all you do is go out there and steer it around and hold it wide open. It gets a little more difficult in a race. And don't come at me with all that, garbage about, how much skill it takes, because I know, because I raced in the front of the pack, and it takes a lot of skill, but it don't take much skill to ride around in the back of the pack or the middle of the pack. And so, yeah, I raced with a bunch of guys had no business out there, honestly, and some of them caused wrecks. And I even got in one of those or two. And so it hadn't changed that much. We've seen a lot of progress since the 80s. But, how are you going to tell? I mean, how do you make this decision? How are you going to tell somebody who has won the Snowball Derby he can't run Daytona? How are you going to do that? I don't know. Cletus has made his starts, and he's made his mistake in the truck race at Daytona. And he was funny in his interview afterwards. And a lot of people watched that race because he was in it. Let's give him a chance. Let him run Rockingham. Dale Jr.'s told him, and I've told him, it ain't about going fast. It's about not causing a wreck, not wrecking, and not getting in the way. If you can do that, you've punched your ticket to Talladega. Then go there and don't try to run in the front of the pack. Just hang out where it's easy and log some experience and build your way forward. That's what they need to do. I loved what Kyle Busch said. I agree with everything. I agree with the criticism of of all of it. I think NASCAR's in a tough spot trying to tell who can and can't race. I remember I had to get approved to run Daytona in the Bush race, 1981, and I was appalled. Like, I sent in my entry and I find out I have to be approved. Approved? Are you kidding me? 3-time ASA champion. They said, you're approved, after they reviewed it because I was 3-time ASA champion. So the process has always been there. How some of these other guys got approved, I'm not sure. And there's always going to be a question because it's a judgment call. It's not black and white. There's not any black and white criteria. And so when it's like that, you're always going to be subject to being questioned and ridiculed for whatever decision you make.
Matt, any thoughts?
Well, the only thing I have is, get your thoughts, Dad. Maybe all this is maybe a little bit worse than it used to be, like back in the 80s and everything. But does it seem like it's a lot worse to people because social media exists now, and so it shines a light on all these situations more? It brings the attention, whereas before you didn't have social media, and it might, something like this deal with Cletus might have just appeared in a newspaper article, and most people really wouldn't pay that much attention about it. And you didn't have, Twitter where everybody could go run and complain and create this hysteria.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. If you didn't like it, you'd talk to your buddies about it, 3 or 4 buddies, and they might talk to their buddies about 3 or 4 buddies, and that's it. Now you put it out there, and if someone, makes a comment on it, it's gone wild. I mean, it's 6 figures, of people that are seeing it and chiming in and stirring up a hornet's nest. So yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, I think it's a lot worse. I think it's always been around. Uh, and then, also, if you're real, if you're able to get your ride based on your social media, that is extra. If you just made money in construction and you bought you a car and got you some stuff and you went and raced, you were ridiculed on a level of 1 to 10, maybe a 6 or 5. If you do it with social media, it's on a 9 out of 10, and so we live in a different day and age. I didn't like it when guys with money that weren't really racers came and raced Daytona or Talladega. I didn't like it. But I think people hate it even more based on social media. And Cletus isn't the only one. And so, yeah, I mean, he's not. And
he might be one of the only male ones.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't begrudge the others. I think it's good for the sport, okay for the sport. They're really not. I mean, it's debatable because people want to make a big deal out of Natalie Decker's deal at Daytona, which I didn't think was as big a deal as got made of. But
yeah, I didn't either.
It was an accident, and that's what it is. And she was mad, and I don't blame her for being mad. That's a racer. So, but most of these are not causing wrecks. They might get caught up in wrecks, but they're not the causers. And that Tony Brodinger, I'm going to tell you right now, she's the best wreck misser I've ever seen in my entire life. She misses more wrecks than anyone I've ever seen, ever. She's not very fast, but damn, she misses wrecks better than any race car driver I've ever seen. I give her credit for that. And maybe she'll get going faster.
Yeah, I think the difference with Cletus though, and I remember a couple years ago, Haley Deegan citing some numbers that she really improved the numbers of the truck series. Some of these other gals, I know they have big social media followings on Instagram and all that. I don't know if they're really moving the needle in terms of TV ratings. Whereas whether you agree with Cletus or not, I think that's the difference. There's a big advantage for NASCAR to have Cletus in these races because I truly believe with 5 million YouTube subscribers and his huge following that he is moving the needle in terms of television. And that's where I think he's different than some of these other people we're talking about.
I agree with that. And I'm all for having him out there. And if he causes wrecks multiple times early on here, then I'm all about telling him he can't run no more. I'm fine with it. Let him have the opportunity to show, that he can learn and stay out of trouble.